Hey guys, Chris here with the Good Old Gamer. So, have you ever seen that one person in a comment section or on a forum that say something so incredibly stupid that you feel compelled to go ahead and educate them? Most of the time, when you're talking about PC tech or hardware, it's usually because one person feels one way about something and another person feels another. And each person is technically correct, but they're also technically wrong. And the reason for this is because not a lot of people, pretty much all of us, base our opinions on value. Now, what's valuable to you is different than what's valuable to me. And the same goes for all tech tubers and reviewers out there. The only thing that we can offer to you is our opinion from what we see, from our experiences, and what we feel a good value is. And this may differ from person to person. And this is the reason why that one annoying person that you keep trying to, make them get it, it's like, this is how this is supposed to be, and then they just can't. That's the reason why. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. How value is so subjective, and the reason why you can't really place an objective sort of thing on value. For me, price to performance is very, very important and is pretty much the number one thing that I look at. But for a lot of people out there, price to performance is not important to them. They place value on other things, either having the latest technology or perhaps they're programmers and they can write things for this new technology that's coming out that the price to performance ratio is complete trash on. But for them, it holds that value because it's cheaper than anything else that they could buy. So that's what we're going to be talking about here today. And we're going to go ahead and talk about what actually makes a fanboy and how they're different than people that just don't feel the same way that you do. So let's go ahead and discuss this. So stick around and check it out. Now, once again, this is just my opinion of the situation, but I'm going to start off with the budget segment. And budget to me is pretty much anything below $179 when it comes to GPUs. Now, this can also relate to CPUs and other markets as well, but just because RTX is so fresh on everybody's mind, we're just going to look at GPUs here today. Next up is the mainstream market. This is your $180 to $299 price bracket. So essentially your RX 580s, your GTX 1060s, both variants, the 3 gig and 6 gig, 4 gig, 8 gig, it doesn't really matter. They both fit within the same segment. Next up is the performance segment. This is your $300 to $599 price point. Now, $599 used to be like the high end, the tip top, the ultra elite. That is no longer the case anymore, and most people that still think that this should be ultra elite fit in the performance category. But once again, that's something we'll talk about here when we start talking about value. And then there is the extreme enthusiast segment at $600 and beyond. Now, I went ahead and said that this is extreme enthusiast instead of just straight up enthusiast because every one of these guys here is probably an enthusiast. If you are watching this video and you own a $150 video card, you are still an enthusiast. Anybody who is enthusiastic about PC games and hardware is an enthusiast. Now, extreme enthusiasts are those that don't really care about the price, they just want the performance. And there's really nothing wrong with that. So that's the reason why I went with extreme enthusiast to differentiate from all the other ones. Now, why is this chart here so important? It's because each and every category has different wants and requirements inside of it. See, as I just mentioned, the extreme enthusiasts typically just want the best and fastest of anything. They don't really care that much about the price. I mean, it does sting, of course. $1,200 on the 2080 Ti is a bit of a push. But these are the guys that either A, can find the value in it because they can either utilize that extra horsepower to make them more money, or they simply just want it because that makes them happy. They want to push gaming to its absolute limit. So for them, the price tag is not that important. It's simply just due to the performance. Now, the performance category and the mainstream category, this is more where I align, typically towards the higher end on mainstream or the lower end on performance. So that's what I can relate to a little bit more readily. Now, the performance category is typically the most, I guess you could say the high-end gamer. So for today, this would be like your 1440p gamer. They're not trying to push 4K 144, have no interest in that, but they want to game at higher resolution, but still want to have all of the nice bells and whistles and features that are coming out. Now, this is pretty much the category that's getting the biggest hose with this new RTX lineup, and we will tie this all together here in a minute, but with the $599 price point being the lowest end RTX 2070, this segment is very upset the fact that they can't get their hands on something that's going to really give them a noticeable difference. So these guys want good performance, but they don't want to spend a crap ton of money for it. Now, mainstream, this is obviously where the vast majority of people, we assume, are. And that's because you get pretty much the most bang for the buck on the hardware here. For example, you can get yourself a $200 GPU, and yeah, maybe you have to upgrade every generation to keep your performance level where you want it to be, but still, you can buy 3 GPUs here, whereas you can only get 1 here, and then you can sell these off along the way. So you typically save a lot more money being in this category. Now, the performance category is kind of in the middle. See, right here, you have to upgrade pretty much every gen if you want to stay current. Performance, you can get away with every other generation. And enthusiast, you can technically get away with probably every 3 generations, but, as an extreme enthusiast, that's just not going to happen. But still, you can sell these off 2 generations later. The value on these cards are going to diminish pretty significantly. Selling these every generation is not going to diminish in value nearly as much. So overall, you're going to save a lot more money here. So this is where you have big price to performance gamers. This is pretty much where they want to stick. And then you have those on extreme budgets, which are like your 1050s, your RX 560s, and even sometimes something like a GTX 1050 Ti, which kind of fits in towards the higher end on here. These are gamers that they just simply don't have a lot of money. They don't care about all the visuals. They just want to play a couple of games. And to them, it's just not worth that huge investment. Now, eventually, these guys typically will go up the ladder if they go ahead and really do enjoy gaming or get into something that's more graphically demanding, like we've seen with PUBG. That's why this category has seen a huge rise. Now, I went ahead over to Steam's hardware survey and utilizing just the last generation, so just the 10 series and the RX series, this is the market share as it stands. You have 38.2% in the budget range and 38.2% in the mainstream range. So together, this is over 76% of the market is sub $300. So this is obviously the vast majority of gamers out there on PC. Now, the market share for the performance is still pretty high at 19.8%. So this is still a sizably large chunk of the market, and these people are wanting basically great bang for the buck, but don't really want to sacrifice on visual fidelity. They want great performance, and it doesn't have to be as good of a value as mainstream, but it still has to deliver some significant value. Now, next up on the extreme market, we're looking at 3.8% overall. So as of right now, really this is only reporting 1080 Ti owners. So this is actually a pretty sizable chunk, but 1080 Ti's have doubled in their market share over the past 6 months. And I think that's largely due to the fact that these guys right here just didn't want to wait. It's been over 2 years since GPUs came out, and they just said, screw it, and they jumped on up. Had GPUs come out 6 months ago, I'm pretty sure that this would be much lower, and this would probably be a little higher. But that's all conjecture, so that doesn't really matter. These are the numbers as they stand today. Now on to the great RTX debate. So this I showed you guys when I talked about the RTX 2080 when the reviews came out. And this is from TechSpot, from Steve from Hardware Unboxed. I will go ahead and put links in the description below so you guys can look at the data for yourselves. But in his comparison, the RTX 2080 versus the 1080 Ti, it's very similar to what everybody else found. They're roughly the same within margin of error. Now, Steve did use an AIB GTX 1080 Ti. He did not use the reference founder model, and that's why the performance is a little bit more on par, as this is an overclocked Founders Edition RTX 2080. So he confirmed that for me, so that's the reason why performance is roughly the same when some people out there are saying that there is a wider gap. Now, these are some really great numbers that he put together based on cost per frame. Now, this is using the MSRPs for all of the current and new GPUs. As you can see, had the RTX not GTX, 2080 Ti come out at the MSRP of $1,000, it's still not the best value, but it's at least somewhere in line. It's close. You're still paying a premium, but that wouldn't have been so bad. And then you'd actually have the RTX 2080 at $700 coming out, obviously just 1% ahead of the 1080 Ti. And had these prices stuck, this would have been a pretty mediocre launch, as you're not getting more value per dollar, but at the very least, you're not really losing out. And there are features on the new 20 series cards that you can't get on the 10 series. So there is value there, just you can't really use it yet. But unfortunately, these are how numbers actually stand today. Steve actually used actual market prices of current gen cards. And as you can see, obviously on the high end, these are so overly inflated cost per frame that they're in their own league. I mean, the RX Vega 64 is an even better value at $570, and you can actually get these for $499 now. So yeah, so that's even better at $499. These cards at $840, which if you want to check in the links in the description below, I have Amazon links to RTX 2080s. That's how much they cost right now. I think I have one under $800 in there, so you might want to snap that up if you're going to buy one. And the RTX 2080 Ti at $1,200 is the worst value of them all when you look at price to performance. And price to performance is what we're talking about here. Even the GTX 1070, even though it's got a lower price at $390, is actually a worse value than the GTX 1070 Ti at $420. That extra $20 is obviously worth the extra performance that you gain, making this a worse value than this. And as you can see, the top tier gaming cards, even the 1080 Ti is nowhere near as good as the 1070 Ti. Going back to our list here, it's because the further down on the stack you go, the more value you get when you look at price to performance. Now, you guys have heard me say price to performance many times in this video, and that's because to me, that's how I gauge value. Now, when I'm talking about value is so subjective. To you, this might mean the fastest thing that's out there. Because to you, maybe that RTX 2080 Ti makes sense. Maybe you have an application for those Tensor cores or for those RT cores. Maybe you're a developer. Maybe, you're in AI and that's the cheapest, piece of hardware you can get with Tensor cores. So for you, the value is reliant on something else. So it doesn't mean that I'm right and you're wrong, or you're right or I'm wrong. Ultimately, what it comes down to is when it comes to value, it's just like an opinion. There really isn't a wrong one. Now, when things do go wrong is when fanboys get into play. Now, the difference between you and I having a discussion and just disagreeing on certain things and fanboys is fanboys will not use objective facts. Objective facts are something like this. The RTX 2080 Ti is the fastest GPU you can buy for gaming today. End of story. That's an objective fact. Nobody can dispute that. I might not think it's a good value at $1,200, and I just described a scenario where you can make the argument where it is a good value at $1,200. So it's kind of up to each of us individually there. Now, if somebody comes out and says that there's no possible way AMD could ever compete with the 2080 Ti, that is false. I mean, nobody knows what the next generation of GPUs are going to be from AMD. We don't have a clue. We have no idea what the performance are going to be. I'm not going to speculate. So why would you say something like that? That is a fanboy. As a community, we need to learn that, hey, just because something's not worth it to me doesn't mean it's not worth it to somebody else. Everything has value to those that need it. Now, there's a lot of people out there that are just straight up brainwashed by marketing. You guys should check out this video right here. I did that last year. Marketing will go ahead and tell you that you need the latest and greatest and you absolutely must buy it. And it doesn't matter if you can use it. Things like RTX and ray tracing and all that, which was the big push when they announced these GPUs. And this is the reason why a lot of people are upset, because there's nothing to utilize, those RT cores right now. Now, a lot of people are excited for DLSS and other features, but they're still not here yet. So we don't know definitively how that's going to turn out. So you're buying on a future promise. And to most people, buying on something that's not tangible and measurable is just not worth it because you're gambling at that point. So if to you, let's say the RTX 2080 is not a good value, but you think maybe in the future it'll be much faster than a 1080 Ti, you are gambling on that. And you're gambling that the games that you want to play will have those features. So you have to realize that that's what you're doing. You're buying into the marketing. They're telling you it's going to totally be worth it, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it actually will be. And taking an interesting look over at the Steam hardware survey, it seems that the overwhelming majority of people are still on 1080p. So something like an RX 580 or GTX 1060 still makes a lot of sense for a lot of people. Really interestingly enough, that I noticed was 1366 by 768 is actually growing faster than any other segment out there. Now, obviously, this is mostly laptops. That's where that resolution's mostly played, not so much on desktops. That's probably the 1080p. But if you take a look at this, that 3.8% of people buying those high-end, the extreme enthusiast level, those are the people that are buying down here. If you look at the percentages, you have 4K at 1.33%. You have 1440p at only 3.62%. So even 1440p is minuscule and absolutely niche at this particular point in time compared to everything else. I mean, if you add up both 4K and 1440p, there are more people still playing at 1366 by 768. And ironically enough, nobody's really targeting this market. They're not showing game performance at these levels. Sometimes you'll see 720p, which is close, but this is the second largest resolution demographic that there is out there. I find that pretty interesting. Also, 1080p is starting to lose a little bit of steam and everything else is growing. So it's kind of strange that you see all the numbers below and above going up. But 1080p is really the only one that has any percentage to lose at this point, I suppose. Now, why did I show you guys those resolutions? It's because I just showed you that more people out there value performance and dollars by using lower resolutions. 1440p and 4K can't even compete with 1366 by 768, let alone all the other sub 1080p resolutions. So maybe Nvidia did think, maybe ray tracing at 1080p might be okay. I'm sure there's actually going to be a fair amount of people that do that. They're going to spend $1,200 on a GPU to ray trace on their 1080p monitors. And according to the numbers, that's good for them. If they can justify the value, if it makes sense to them, that's on them. Or you, if that happens to be you. So what I think is a good value and what I do on this channel is just present you guys with my thoughts and my opinions. So you guys know where I'm at. I like VRR above anything else, which right now means I'm going to be sticking with AMD, and Intel will also be supporting FreeSync. So that will be an option here in the future, unless Nvidia goes ahead and supports open and free standards. Probably not going to happen anytime soon, but it might at some point. So to me, that holds more value. So if I have equivalent AMD and Nvidia GPUs, much like the RX 580 or the GTX 1060, which, that's why I benchmarked them here in that Shadow of the Tomb Raider video, because that's where most people are gaming, you can go ahead and see which one makes sense to you. Looks like the RX 580 starting to catch some wind with the DirectX 12 games now becoming more commonplace. So that seems like that was definitely a good investment there. So the newer games are running a little bit better, and I get my FreeSync, so that's the reason why I went with it over a GTX 1060. Now, if you have a G-Sync monitor, then obviously NVIDIA makes more sense to you. Or if you don't care about variable refresh rate, then it doesn't matter at all. That is not a factor, and you have to look at other things, maybe like performance per watt. That might be more interesting to you. So in summary, this video is basically just me explaining to you guys that when you're talking with other people and you look at a product, it might be crap to you, it might be the best thing ever to you, but it's not going to be good for everybody. And it doesn't necessarily mean that people can't afford it, or they're not enthusiasts and they're not real gamers if they don't spend $1,200 on a GPU. That's not the case. It's just the fact that they value other things above things that you find to be valuable. And it's just that simple. And it goes for all hardware, and it goes for many things out there. Now, like I said, objective facts, those cannot be argued. They are what they are, and you have to take them for what they are. Now, you can form an opinion and judge value based upon those facts, And that's really the smart way to do things. But let me know what you guys think down in the comment section below. Do you think that we should go ahead and realize that products do have different values for other people? For me, the RTX series is a pass just due to the fact that it's just way too much money. There's not enough value there. It doesn't offer anything better than what the previous generation had at this point. DLSS is an unknown. It might be good in the future. RTX until ray tracing has been out for probably 3 or 4 generations. I'm not going to really be too interested in it. Performance needs to get higher and implementation needs to be there first before it's interesting to me. For you guys, it might be different, but let me know down in the comment section below what you guys think. And if you guys like what I'm doing here, please consider becoming a patron over on Patreon. Today is my birthday, so I'm a good older gamer here today. So I'm still bringing out content like this for you guys, and by jumping over here, you guys can help me out to get tech on hand so I can do more videos like that Shadow of the Tomb Raider comparison using mainstream graphics cards, which the vast majority of you guys out there are using. Now, if you're not interested in helping out in that way, you can also jump onto my Amazon page where I have all the latest RTX stuff, latest CPUs, GPUs, even consoles on here. And you can pick them up on here if you're planning on buying them anyway. And a little bit of that comes back to the channel and helps me out. And I really appreciate the support. But that's all I have for today, guys. And I will catch you guys in the next video.